That quote really hits home. It's that feeling when the heat is so intense, even our technology, our last line of defense, just can't keep up. It's about a whole community being forced to just hide. So let's dive into what that was actually like for people all across Australia.
So today, we're going to break down the anatomy of this record-shattering heat wave that just gripped the entire nation. We're going to look at it from the ground up, from the personal stories right up to the staggering continent-wide data. All right, here's our roadmap. We'll start with what it actually felt like to be in the middle of it all. Then we'll zoom out to see how whole communities were impacted. After that, we'll get into the jaw-dropping records that were broken, look at the devastating toll on wildlife, and finally, we'll connect all the dots to the bigger climate picture.
So first up, what was it actually like to live through this thing? Well, for millions of people, daily life as they knew it just came to a grinding halt.
I mean, think about this. Not even a huge international sporting event like the Australian Open could handle it. They had to suspend play because the official heat stress scale, which is what they use to measure the real risk to athletes, hit its absolute maximum, level 5. That just goes to show how truly dangerous the conditions were for everyone.
And you see this ghost town effect. In Dubbo, New South Wales, where they smashed their all-time heat record, the streets were just empty. Life literally moved indoors. And that story, that sense of a community just retreating from the heat, was playing out all over the country.
Okay, so from those individual experiences, let's zoom out a little bit and see the immense strain this put on entire communities and the infrastructure we all rely on.
So what does this number mean? Well, that's 11,000 homes in Victoria that suddenly lost their power. Just as everyone was cranking up the air conditioning to try and survive, the electrical grid just couldn't take the heat and the demand. It buckled, leaving thousands of people totally vulnerable at the absolute worst possible moment.
And the heat wasn't the only threat. Of course, it created these perfect tinderbox conditions for bushfires. So imagine this. You're dealing with unbearable heat, and then you're told there's an out-of-control fire heading your way, and oh, by the way, your water supply might be cut off. It's a terrifying, layered crisis. And this was the reality for communities in Victoria, where volunteer firefighters were just working around the clock to save homes.
It's really easy to forget just how dangerous heat itself is. One hospital in Melbourne said they saw a 25% jump in emergency admissions during the heat wave. And here's the bottom line. Heat waves aren't just uncomfortable. They are by far Australia's deadliest natural hazard. They put this incredible strain on our bodies and on our healthcare systems.
All right, let's zoom out again and look at the numbers. Because honestly, the data from this event is just staggering. It really paints a picture of a crisis that stretched right across the continent.
So this wasn't just a few hot days, not by a long shot. According to the Bureau of Meteorology, the entire month was exceptional. It was the 4th hottest January since records even began back in 1910. That really sets the stage for the extreme local temperatures we saw.
So first up, Victoria. The mercury soared to 48.9 degrees. That's a potential new all-time record for the state, even hotter than the infamous Black Saturday back in 2009.
And it didn't stop there. Over in New South Wales, the heat just kept climbing, hitting a staggering 49.2 degrees.
And finally, in South Australia, the town of Renmark hit a blistering 49.6 degrees Celsius. You get the picture, right? These weren't just a few isolated hotspots. This was a vast, searing blanket of heat that was stretching across 3 states, really pushing the absolute limits of survival.
The human cost was just immense, but we have to talk about the ecological toll because it was just as profound. Let's take a look at the devastating impact this heat wave and the fires it fueled had on Australia's unique wildlife.
The scale of the destruction it's just hard to wrap your head around. Over 435,000 hectares burned in Victoria alone. For animals like flying foxes, the heat itself was the killer. It caused the worst mass die-offs since the Black Summer fires. For so many others, it was the flames that just consumed their homes.
To really understand the impact, let's zoom in on one story. This is the eastern bristlebird. It's an endangered ground-dwelling songbird. The fires tore through 60% of its last remaining critical habitat in the entire state.
And this is why that is so terrifying. There are fewer than 200 of these birds left in Victoria. When you lose that much habitat for such a tiny population, you're pushing a species right to the very, very edge of existence.
And, it wasn't just the animals. This is the southern shepherd's purse, a delicate native herb.
Fires burned through what was believed to be the last known wild population of this plant on the entire planet.
And here's the assessment from botanists. Just 2 words: feared extinct. It's a phrase that conveys a loss that could be absolutely permanent. This event didn't just threaten species, it may have completely erased some.
Okay, so we've seen the devastation, we've seen the cost, but the big, crucial question is why? Why did this happen? Let's do our final zoom out and connect this event to the long-term data and the science of climate change. Take a look at this chart. What you're seeing is Australia's average January temperatures going all the way back to 1910. And the trend? Well, it's undeniable. It's going up. In fact, Australia has now had 24 Januaries in a row with above-average temperatures. So this heat wave wasn't some freak event. It was part of a clear, long-term pattern.
So here's the bottom line. This is what the science tells us. An event this intense used to be something you'd expect to see maybe once every 25 years. But because of human-caused climate change, it's now a 1-in-5-year event. The crucial takeaway is this: our warming climate made an event of this intensity 5 times more likely to happen.
And that leaves us with a pretty tough thought, doesn't it? We've seen the impact on people, on communities, on our incredible ecosystems. We've seen the data, we've seen the science. So the question we're all left with is this: are we witnessing the moment where these terrifying, record-breaking heat waves stop being the exception and start becoming our new, dangerous summer norm?